Welcome to our posts. Today, we will see stories of r/malicious compliance. We must get our pictures taken. Okay. I worked in a factory years ago that had what we called the wall of shame. It had pictures taken by a professional photographer of all office and floor personnel. As you would expect, the floor personnel were all in dirty factory clothes, office people in dress attire. This was done when that plant opened and new hires were sent to the photographer's studio for their picture at the end of their first year. I worked third shift and was told that I and another coworker had to go after our shift to get it done. Tried to get out of it, but was told in no uncertain terms that we had to go. Cue the seemingly harmless malicious compliance. The coworker I went with was a drinking buddy. I told him at the bar the day before to bring a shirt and tie. He asked why, and I told him it would upset the plant manager. He was in. The next morning, we went to the studio, and the photographer gave us a puzzled look. He said he thought he had 2 floor workers scheduled, not office workers. For those that don't know, floor workers at most factories are considered extremely stupid trained monkeys. I innocently said we didn't know we couldn't look nice for our pictures. He dubiously took our pictures and sent us on our way. The fallout. About a month later, my coworker and I were called into the plant manager's office to explain our pictures. He was ready to explode when I again explained we just wanted to look nice as our pictures were being professionally taken. He turned a deep shade of red when I added I didn't know it was against the rules for floor workers to dress up for their pictures. He dismissed us while trying not to flip out on us. My friend and I barely held our laughter in as he slammed the door behind us. It gave me great amusement to look at those pictures until they closed the plant. Next story. You can't put a cashier's check on a credit card. Watch me. Back in the late 1990s, I was doing my banking at Solomon Smith Barney, which had a unique credit card. It wasn't a normal credit card or a debit card. It was a true credit card that wouldn't let you spend more than what you had in your checking account. This meant the money was earmarked but not deducted until the due date. One day, I needed a cashier's check for $1,500 and went to a branch of my personal bank rhymes with Bell's Bargo across town, not Solomon Smith Barney. I had to go to the customer service desk and requested a cashier's check, planning to pay with my Solomon Smith Barney credit card. The lady at the desk, who was not particularly kind, snapped at me, saying, "You can't put a cashier's check on a credit card." I understood her reasoning, but her attitude was unnecessary. Desperate to get the cashier's check, I argued a bit, but she was adamant and almost seemed to enjoy my predicament. Then, she asked if there was anything else she could help with. Cue malicious compliance. I slid my credit card back to her and asked for a cash advance of $1,500. Back then, they used the old manual credit card imprint machines, so she had to go through the tedious process of imprinting my card, getting the paperwork approved, and doling out the cash. Once I had the $1,500 in $100 bills in my hand, she asked if there was anything else she could do. I said, "Yes, I need a cashier's check for $1,500. She started to repeat her earlier refusal, but stopped mid-sentence when she realized I now had the cash. Dumbfounded, she had no choice but to process my cashier's check. I walked out with the check in hand, feeling very satisfied with outsmarting her and getting what I needed despite her initial refusal. It's a story I've cherished for decades. Edit. I'm amazed that this post has changed from a minor malicious compliance to a discussion about the terms of my Solomon Smith Barney credit card that was tied to my brokerage checking account. Some people have questioned whether or not I understand the difference between a debit and a credit card. Oh, I do. I also have a good memory. I remember how cool this card was. I know how a credit card advances money with exorbitant cash advance fees that you are liable to pay back by a certain day each month. I know that you pay interest if you don't pay off your balance in full. I know that you pay a late charge if you don't pay your minimum on the due date. Versus a debit card, the money is taken out of your account immediately. Enter this cool card. Never interest or late charges because the credit card company pulled the money from your checking account once a month on the due date. Although that money was still in the checking account earning interest, it was not available for withdrawal and was not part of the available balance. Worked as an ATM card, but with a limit I don't remember how much, something around $800. But it also worked as a card that I could get a cash advance, and back then, there was no cash advance fee. Yes, I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. And it was the nice people at my Solomon Smith Barney Bank that told me about this trick. Again, it was in the 90s. The limit on cash advance was higher than that of the ATM limit. I think it was about a $200 limit, but I don't remember exactly. This credit card also offered reward points. I used the points to get a Bose Wave radio and 2 round-trip airline tickets to Lisbon, Portugal. I've never heard of a debit card that offered reward points. So, yes, I know this card had unusual rules and rewards, but it was the 90s and Solomon Smith Barney was a brokerage house, not a bank. So this account had unusual perks. I missed this account. If it was still available, I would have one. And this wasn't a debit card. This was a true credit card. It offered everything that a credit card did, including reward points. I've never heard of a debit card that had reward points. Thank you to everyone who took time to respond. Next story. How one manager's layoff decision led to a $200K mistake and an unintended comeback. Backstory. This is another story about Sam and Murad. My manager, Sam, is extremely chill and an outstanding leader. His manager, Murad, is a stickler for the rules. I work as an infrastructure and configuration manager and happen to be one of the more expensive resources on the project from my domain. This story takes place in January 2023. The company was undergoing some restructuring, and most of our contracts included a last in, first out LIFO clause by default. When I joined in March 2022, I took a 10% pay cut to remove the LIFO clause from my contract because I was seeking job stability. Although I was still earning more than I did in my previous job, it was only 20% more instead of 30%. Story. As the infrastructure manager, I am responsible for maintaining all the product licenses the project uses. One of these product licenses requires a digital signature to function. Typically, such tasks require the use of service accounts, which are owned by users. When someone leaves the organization, their service accounts are automatically transferred to their manager. Unfortunately, service accounts cannot have digital signatures, so I had to use mine in this case. The product activation process involves using the corresponding digital signature certificate DSC. Since I already had a DSC for tax purposes, I decided to reuse it instead of obtaining a separate one. In India, DSCs are encrypted and require a one-time password OP from my mobile number every time they are used. This mobile number must be associated with my national ID Aadhaar, as that's how most encryption services work in India. Sam was on vacation, his first in 5 years. Apart from taking a one-day leave in 2018 when he moved from India to Europe, he had never even taken a sick day. He recently got married, and for his honeymoon, he took a 2-month vacation to travel all over Europe with his new wife. In his absence, Murad was overseeing the project. Management asked Murad to cut 15% of his workforce. If you've read my previous posts, you would know that Murad was not pleased with me. So, the inevitable happened. I was called into a meeting with Murad and HR. Murad asked me to voluntarily resign, or else I would be let go. This is a tactic companies in India often use, as getting fired is considered a much bigger deal than simply losing a job. It's a cultural thing. I suppose being fired carries a stigma that most people want to avoid. HR usually tries to persuade people to resign voluntarily so that it doesn't become public knowledge that they were fired. This tactic often works well, as resigning saves the company from having to pay 3 months' salary, which they would owe if they were to lay off an employee. However, I knew better, so I refused his request. Murad was quite taken aback by this. Since I had called his bluff, He had to double down to show he meant business. By the end of the day, I received my termination email with instructions on how to return company property I had. "Here's the MC," I replied to the email, asking to schedule the return of the laptop promptly, as I needed to leave the city for a few days. Fake excuse. My objective was to have them pick up my laptop from my place and format it as soon as possible. This will be important later. By the end of the week, my laptop was picked up. I had already backed up a copy of my DSC, so there were no issues on my end. Fast forward to mid-February, and there was an issue with the product. A support ticket was raised, and the support team wanted to upgrade to the next version, as this was a known bug that had been resolved in the next version. The product was used once a week to create a weekly report, but no one really looked at it except for Sam, who was still on vacation. So, its absence wasn't likely to be noticed for at least a full month. The end of the month report would bring it to upper management's attention. Now, support SOP requires a license check. Hence, it required decryption of the existing license. Long story short, I received a call asking for the DSC and OTP, and I rejected. Murad eventually was informed, who asked the support team to provide a new license. The product support team informed him that they couldn't provide a new license without the company purchasing one. The license cost for this product was $200K. At this point, Murad decided that they could live without the report. He mostly handled the team side of the project, so he wasn't really aware of the impact of this report. Sam returned from vacation at the end of February. By the first week of March, he noticed the missing weekly report and promptly called me. I informed him that Murad had fired me. Sam was quite perplexed, to say the least. Unlike Murad, he knew that the current license needed my DSC to work, so he asked if my DSC was available. I told him that my laptop had a copy, but it was taken. He checked the system, and sure enough, the laptop had been formatted. He asked me if there was any way to resolve the issue. I informed him that even if there were a way, I couldn't help him without being an employee. He asked me to wait for a few days. There is a quarterly meeting that takes place in the middle of every third month, attended by the CEO and top brass. At the March meeting, everyone noticed the missing report. The CEO asked why this important project was missing the report. Sam informed him there were about 90 people on the call that a key person had been let go, and the report couldn't be prepared without spending $200K on a new license. Now, I heard the recording of this call after rejoining, so I'll share the relevant conversation below. CEO, is this related to the layoff? Sam, yes. CEO, why wasn't this person's work backed up? Why was he on the LIFO list if he was so key? Sam, he wasn't on the LIFO list. Murad jumps in, he joined less than a year ago. He must be on that list. CEO, let's discuss this offline after the call. I don't know what transpired in the offline meeting, but 2 days later, I received a call from the head of HR offering me my job back. I asked for the following: a 100% raise and promotion to next level. Out of LIFO, obviously. Permanent WFH mentioned in contract. I keep the termination payout. Since it will be counted as a new job in my profile, a joining bonus 20% of annual salary. I joined back at the 3rd week of March. I received a brand new laptop within 30 minutes of joining, hand-delivered at my home by someone from it in my city. It took me 10 minutes to decrypt the license using my backed up DSC, 30 minutes to upgrade the product to next version. By end of lunch, CEO had the report in hand. My new promoted role offers a 60% increase in my medical insurance amount, a take-home company car, option to purchase company stock, and lots of other upgrades. I personally thanked Murad on my first week for the promotion and recognition by CEO in a team-wide call, the same 90 people, minus the top brass and CEO. Edit: OMG, this blew up. I have been reading all comments and answering as best I could. We'll clarify a few things below. We'll keep adding to it as more questions pile on. It is not at all common or accepted to use a personal DSC for such an important company asset. The product company was undergoing migration of their encryption scheme and was temporarily using the government-certified encryption scheme. Once their migration was completed, we were supposed to obtain a new updated license that had the new encryption for free. I was meaning to do that, but with my workload, simply didn't find the time. Basically, since it was working fine, it wasn't a priority. The company didn't rehire me with that seemingly enormous payout for the license dependency. Yes, that was a dependency, but had I been a crappy worker worthy of getting fired, they would have paid the $200K instead. Sam wanted me back, hence I was hired back. I have a lot of proprietary knowledge and overall a great resource. Murad is the brother of the wife of a senior board member. I still work with him in the project, so does Sam. It's one of those cons of life that you accept and move on. He is pissed with anyone who isn't licking his boots. Over time, I have done a lot for the project, and he now understands how valuable a resource I am. He has stopped trying to kick me out. Next story. You are not capable of doing my job. Okay. So earlier this year, my boss took 3 months off to have some surgery and recover. I have been working for 28 years in my field, and I'm pretty capable of my job. My boss is a highly strung woman who believes only she knows how to do anything. Before my boss took her extended leave, I asked about filling in her role while she was on leave, and she told me, "You are not capable of doing my job. No one here is." I asked again in an email and was told the same thing. I sent the email to all my work colleagues. When they advertised to fill in my boss's role, no one applied. When management asked everyone why did no one apply, they all said they were not capable. There are over 40 staff who did not apply. Someone from another site did apply. He had just completed his new graduate year. They appointed Bob, who was 24. Bob emailed me after a week directing me to do all his work. There was multiple links and document, stock order, meeting agendas, etc. I replied I was happy to do this when I get a free moment. I did nothing. It was clear within a week that Bob had no idea how to be boss and things were going wrong very quickly. I was called to a HR meeting and asked why I wasn't doing Bob's work he instructed me to do. I informed him that I already have a full-time job doing my work. How can I do Bob's as well? Secondly, I showed the email that said no one is capable of doing my boss's job. I was left alone after this. Bob basically did nothing for 3 months. My boss returned blowing up how much work she has to do. She tried to blame the workers on the ground for not being helpful enough. I sent her back her email where she stated that I nor any staff was capable of doing her work. We didn't see her leave her office for months. Next story. Okay HR, he's your problem now. Like some of my previous stories, this tale revolves around my time as a supervisor in a call center, an employee who didn't like me called Jamers, and my malicious compliance with HR. Jamers was a new hire, probably about 21 at the time. Young kid whom you could tell grew up privileged and entitled. But hey, I didn't do the hiring and everyone deserves a chance starting out somewhere. I just wish this guy was hired somewhere else. Now, I prided myself as being a fair guy, friendly, and understanding. Jamers, however, was always the victim and nothing was ever his fault. Customer complained on his service, not his fault. Incorrect information given. He was told the wrong information. Called off. Something had come up beyond his control. On and on it went with him. Nothing ever his fault. The issue with me came to a head when I had to correct him on a call he took. The information he gave was so incorrect and potentially damaging to the client. I had to call the client and give them the correct information while apologizing for the misinformation. Company policy at the time caused this to be an automatic write-up. I brought Jamers to an office, door opened mind you, to tell him he was being written up and why. At first it started with every excuse in the book. Then it started with him asking why I was being hostile and mean I wasn't, and why was I yelling again. I wasn't, and the door was left open so there would have been multiple witnesses. he refused to sign the write-up. That's fine, it would go in his file regardless. As we were done, he marched up to HR. About half an hour later, HR called me into their office. They asked me why I yelled and cussed at Jamers. What the F? Now my bad for not having another sup with me when writing him up. But everyone would have heard me yelling had it happened. I'm a big guy and my voice carries. I denied this, of course. HR told me they were throwing out this write-up, since to them it wasn't a big issue. This act effectively neutered me, which caused a ripple effect. It was now known if I did my job, HR would just reverse anything I did. HR also told me from here on out, if Jamers had an issue or infraction, they would handle it. Okay? So here is where the malicious compliance comes into play. They had zero idea how many side conversations and other crap I had to deal with when it came to Jamers. Needed to call off. Sorry, go talk to HR. Got a complaint. I'd tell him to go to HR and I'd send them an email why. Requesting a day off to HR you went. It became a fact that HR had to deal with him once to twice a day for months. Anything even slightly minor, I sent him to HR. I know it was driving them insane, as they hated to be bothered. Finally, HR asked me to have a meeting with them. They told me Jamers called off and he was going to be put on a final, and they wanted me to do it. I reminded them they asked to be put in charge of him. We came to a compromise as I wanted to play nice and said we both would. Jamers was brought to the office and told he was being put on a final for attendance. But it wasn't his fault, he cried. He had to go to the doctor. HR asked for his doctor's excuse. He said he would bring it tomorrow. The next day, Jamers came into HR and said, "This isn't working out, I quit." HR got a hint of what I dealt with, and the trash took itself out. I love the justice. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share, and subscribe the channel. Our posts